right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Pompeani here in the Fan Cave. We're live until 11 o'clock tonight at 412-575-2600. So if you want to get your calls in, this is the time to do it as we talk about the end of the Steelers season, which came down in a collapse, losing 5 consecutive games and not scoring more than 17 points and never having the lead once in those 5 games. That's something that hasn't happened around here since 1969 before Chuck Noll came on the job. So they have a lot of concerns heading into this offseason. Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette reported today that his sources tell him Mike Tomlin is back for another season. He signed an extension, so that's a lot of money to eat if you're them, and $48 million over the next 3 years. But there will be changes. I don't think there's any question whenever you go through this for another year in a row, and for the 6th straight time in the playoffs, similar script, falling behind way early and trying to come back in the game. Obviously, they have some issues there, and they're on both sides of the ball, quite frankly, at 412-575-2600. That's the number to call. In offense, you got to figure out your quarterback, and this is something they've been chasing ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired. They've gone through Mitch Trubisky. They drafted Kenny Pickett. They brought Mason Rudolph as a third-round pick. It's interesting, in that year they took Mason Rudolph in 2016 in the 3rd round. It was Lamar Jackson who went in the 1st round after the Steelers passed on him to take Terrell Edmonds. And it was like 4 picks later, Baltimore took Jackson. And they certainly have worked with him and developed him. And now he's already won 2 MVPs, and there's a very good chance he's going to win a 3rd, or at least he's there with Josh Allen. I think those guys are very much on the same level. If there ever was a time for a co-MVP situation, this may be it. Because of the numbers they put up. And by the way, Buffalo won today, so they eliminate Denver, and now it's going to be Baltimore going to Buffalo. I'd be anxious to hear your take on that game and what you expect. I'm pretty bullish on Baltimore just by what they've been able to do. Jackson has been outstanding. Their run game, that's what their identity is. They ran the ball 50 times yesterday, and the Steelers knew they were going to do that, and yet they still could not stop them. 300 yards in the rushing department. Derrick Henry is just incredible. Their scheme, the RPO game, all of that was something the Steelers simply could not diagnose. And, they were often being faked out by Jackson, who kept the ball 5 consecutive runs, which is something I haven't seen him do really probably ever down there. He's run the ball, but not like that, 5 consecutive plays. But it kept working, and they kept calling it. So now the situation is, what do you do in this offseason? We'll start with quarterbacks. I'd like to hear your take at 412-575-2600. Do you bring back Russell Wilson, who's going to be 37 next year? Or do you stick with Justin Fields? Or do you do neither? They got a lot of questions to try to figure out. Now, the conventional thinking was, coming into the season, they wanted Wilson to be the guy with this offense. And there was a spurt when he went in there, and he gave them a lot of good passing games. But as the season went on, those games kind of dissipated. There weren't as many open receivers. And quite frankly, a lot of the plays were to the outside, to the boundaries, not over the middle. It limited the production of tight ends. And as a result, George Pickens gets injured, and when he comes back, not the same, although he was okay yesterday. But again, yesterday was a case where they were giving up more plays in the second half. Baltimore had such a cushion that they were playing more, just keep the ball in front of them, and they didn't a couple of times, and Pickens took advantage of that. So I'll ask you, where do you start? Me personally, I'd be surprised if they kept Russell Wilson, and I only say that because I think even though he can operate this system next year, sooner or later, you got to solve this quarterback situation as far as finding a, quote, franchise quarterback. This would be kicking the can down the road for another year or two. I think at least with Justin Fields, if you want to keep him around and believe he can develop, and I think we saw some positive signs in that 6-game run where he went 4-2, that he might be able to figure it out here. Sort of a reset season for him in Pittsburgh, and I think it helped him. So do you go in that direction? Do you go in Wilson's direction? Or do you go some other direction? 412-575-2600. They have a lot of free agents coming up, and you wonder how many of them are going to leave. They're going to have a big-time new roster coming up next year. A lot of offseason questions for both Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, and owner Art Rooney as well. So we'll try to figure all this out as we go along in the next several weeks. It's a busy NFL offseason for sure, but there's still a lot of football to be played. I'd like to hear your take on some of those games, including what lies ahead. That's Houston at Kansas City, Baltimore at Buffalo in the AFC. 412-575-2600. We'll take a break, get the calls on as soon as we can right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, 7 nights a week, KDKA+. All right, welcome back. Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from Pitt's women's basketball team. They tied for the largest comeback in NCAA women's basketball history. So they played at home today at the Peterson Event Center. They were down by 32 points in this game against SMU. They came all the way back and won by 13, so that's a 45-point difference. SMU had 0 points in the third quarter as Pitt went on a 28-0 run. You very seldom see anything like that, but that was one of the positive notes of the day. I know Pitt, I think their wrestling team beat West Virginia. There's other stuff going on as well, but that's a very interesting headline. We'll show you some of the highlights again coming up tonight at 11 o'clock on KDKA, and afterwards it's the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. 11:35, it gets a little spicy tonight with Andrew Filipponi, Mark Caboli, and Brian Batko of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Also, as I showed you in the highlights there, the Penguins lost, they lost again. They lost yesterday, embarrassingly, 6-0 to Ottawa. Today, they lose by a final count of 5-2. It was actually 3-2. Penguins pulled a goalie and 2 late goals by Tampa Bay, but man, they gave the puck away carelessly in their own zone when it was 2-2 late in the game, and Nikita Kucherov took full advantage of that as he moved in and scored. And the Penguins' goaltending situation is a valid concern. Yesterday, Nedeljkovic gave up 6. His numbers fell behind those of Tristan Jarry, and today Jarry 3 goals on 15 shots he faced. You got to come up with more timely saves. He did make a breakaway save on Brandon Hagel to keep it tied at the time, but man, they got to get better in that department as they will skate again on Tuesday night when Seattle comes to town. In the meantime, 412-575-2600. A lot of people on the lines. Let's get to Jerry in Franklin. Hello, Jerry. How are you?
Hey, Bob. Doing great. Hey, thanks for taking my call. Well, you brought up a lot of great questions at the beginning. On Russell Wilson, if you look at his end-of-game stats, they don't look too bad. I think it was like 20 for 27 for 279 yards or something like that. A couple of touchdowns. But the Steelers were never in this game. And I don't know what you do. It's just really disappointing. Minka has just been going downhill every year, and TJ's going to be 31 next year. Cam is, heading into his mid to late 30s, and there's going to be a time, I think, when you're going to have to blow it all up, and hopefully Tomlin will get and pack his collective bags, as he was talking about, and move on down the highway.
Well, I don't foresee that happening. Again, he signed a new extension last year, but there will be changes to the coaching staff. I don't think there's any question about that. Even though a lot of these problems may be scapegoated more so than anything else, Mike Tomlin is the overseer of everything at that organization, so it all starts there. And again, you mentioned the stats on Wilson. They look better because, at that point, Baltimore was so in command of the game. They were giving up things, and the Steelers did it. Now, I thought the Steelers might come out in that game yesterday and really start throwing the ball all over the place. 5 wide, move everything around quick into pace. No, instead they start pretty much the same way. Trying to ignite a ground game just was not working, and they couldn't stop Baltimore's run game, even with that defense, as lauded as it's been, but it's getting older, as you say. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I don't know, if their scheme was to put him back there to keep things in front of him, that's a failed situation. He was a Pro Bowler this year, mostly on reputation. He didn't make many significant plays. Yes, there was the interception in Baltimore in the regular season, but that was more miscommunication by, I think, Bateman and Jackson. I want him to be in a role like Troy Polamalu. If I'm coaching that team, I want him to be somebody who's just unaccounted for at times. He's moving around a lot. Instead, he's sitting back there as the last line of defense. And oftentimes when he gets to that level, plays are very successful. So I think there's a lot of schematic issues with this team as well. Let's go to Jim in Allison Park. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Hi, Bob. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes.
Just want your input. Wilson, again, I don't think he's the future. Fields, he's been in the league. I don't think he's a playoff top-notch quarterback.
But he's 12 years younger.
I know. My question, Bob, to get to the elite level, playoff, Super Bowl, barring those 2 quarterbacks, when you look around, the guys coming out of college this year, not a great draft. Teams in the league, what's out there that they could, pick up. It just seems to me there's just not a lot of answers at quarterback for the Steelers. And the other question I would have is, for Tomlin early on, how much of that success was attributable to Ben Roethlisberger? I'll hang up and listen to your call.
Well, a lot, obviously, when you have a quarterback like that, although he certainly didn't maximize Ben's time here, especially in playoff games. And, of course, Ben and others contributed to that. There were a lot of sloppy plays. You might remember the snap over the head by Pouncey to Roethlisberger. That game got off to like a 28-0 deficit. All these games have that in common in the postseason. They're never competitive, and they look better because of some late game statistical, stuffing that goes on only because the other team's in a position to let you do it. And I don't like that at all. So I think, they certainly have a lot of issues they got to take care of here. And the quarterback situation will be, again, the number one issue, only because it's the most important position out there. You have to figure out how this is going to go. And again, if Russell Wilson is to return, and if that's what they want, he's going to want probably minimum 3 years. Are you in a position to give him 3 years? Because 3 years takes him to 40. At some point, as I said, you have to try to figure out this quarterback situation with younger people who can come in and develop. And maybe the development is a problem here. I'm not sure. There are many levels to this. But, Wilson is certainly capable, although I thought late in the year you saw his limitations. Fields, I'll say this. When we saw him in a situation where they were down 17 in Indianapolis, they lost that game, yes. But he was in a position to dig out from that, and he showed me a lot in that game. I still think it's a reset season for him. By stepping back, kind of taking an overall global look at this, he may be better off. And I think that he has upside, much more upside than I think a lot of people think. So we'll see what they do, but it'll be the number one question moving forward. Let's go to Terry in Canonsburg. Hey, Terry, how are you?
Hey, Bob, thanks for taking the call.
Sure. What's up?
Hey, listen, I called you about this time last year, and I told you at that time I've worked in 6 continents and spent a lot of time with senior leaders, but the truth is the buck stops with the coach and the GM, and it's time for the coach to change. It is just the time. And if we don't, we're going to become kind of like we felt in the 80s, like in the steel industry, the city of past champions. We got to do something different.
Well, there's no question it's crying for something different. I think that's clear. And quite frankly, Art Rooney last year, when he spoke publicly after the season, said that he judges coaches based on how the season goes and how stronger they get as the year moves on. Well, this has been the opposite of that. He was very urgent in the need for playoff wins. That did not happen. But again, they signed him to a long contract. They're not going to eat that money. They're going to keep him here, and that's the way that is. So if you want to talk about that, you can. A lot of people have for many years. The problem is they need better coaches all the way through the system, I think, and they have to have different visions and different people who are capable of developing some of these players, more so than we've seen. Back to the list of so many different questions here. Minka's one of them on defense. A lot of people have thrown out the scenario about T.J. Watt, who is a Hall of Fame player, but he was really ineffective yesterday and the game before that. In fact, go all the way back to the Kansas City game. And I think he was been hurt maybe more so than we're led to believe. But whatever the case may be, he is 31 or going to be 31. He's going to want a new contract because he has 1 year left. They have a lot of guys in that situation. So what do? Do you sign him to more, or do you dangle him as a trade bait? I hate to think that way with him because to me he's one of those one helmet guys that I'd like to see stay here forever. But at the same time, maybe he wants a change as well. Who knows how this is all going to work out? But these are questions that will be thrown out and talked about quite a bit. Back to the lines, we have Paul in Salzburg. Hello, Paul. What's up?
Bob, my main concern is it all stems from Mr. Rooney down. Mr. Rooney is the man, and I think when you let quality people like Mike Munchak go, they invested all that money in the offensive line, and they let an offensive line coordinator go like that there. I can't understand.
Well, it was his choice to leave. He wanted to be with his daughter, just so you know. But I get what you're saying. They need better coaches, period. And that's all due respect to people who are doing these jobs. I know they're difficult jobs, and you're judged based on results. And that's what this is about. It's a results-based business. And I know Art Rooney well enough to know he wants to win, and he wants to win as much as he can. But he also, and he's a big believer in stability. That's all well and good. But then when there's time for change, you have to make some changes. We've seen some changes over the years from Bruce Arians, Randy Fichtner before him, Todd Haley. They're good, bad, and different. Changes come. It's part of the business. Michael in Beaver Falls. Hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little disappointed, though, majorly disappointed, Bob. Anyway, remember at the beginning of the whole season how you and I talked about how difficult it was going to be for the Steelers? Everything had to be new. Well, we did pretty good. You can't really be too down on the Steelers. We are not sore losers. We tried with the best we could. It would have been really good if all the coaches of the Steelers would have listened to the people calling in the nightly sports call. We had all these good ideas how we could win games, and they did not comply.
Well, that's Michael. Listen, they know a lot of stuff. They have a lot of information at their fingertips. And the bottom line is, I don't feel good about their season. When you're 10-3, you expect more. They were 2 games in front of Baltimore, had a chance to win a division, and also an outside chance of getting a #1 seed, knowing that Kansas City was on their schedule, and yet everything just imploded. Period. So, no, to me, this has not been a good season. It would be, to me, after 10-3, looked at as a failure based on where they were and what their expectations were. So they have a lot of work to do. So do we. Join us tonight, #1 Cochran Sports Showdown, 11:35, KDKA. A lot to get into there with Andrew Filipponi, Mark Caboli, and Brian Batko. I'll take a break, come back with more right here on KDKA. Plus, it's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Erica Stanish is standing by with a preview of what's coming up tonight at 11 on KDKA. Erica?
Yeah, hey, Bob, here's what's coming up. But we're on the scene of breaking news in North Swickley Township, where 2 people are dead and 2 more were flown from the scene of a reported shooting on Schaefer Road. Our reporter Ricky Sayer is there, and he will be joining us live with the latest developments. Plus, meteorologists are predicting a change in the weather out west, and it could have a huge impact on those massive wildfires in Los Angeles. We're going to have all that for you coming up at 11. We'll see you then.
All right, Erica, thanks very much. Got some tweets in. Steelers, Pirates, Pens, Fans 97 says, do the Steelers consider trading George Pickens this offseason? Sign a big-name receiver. Also use their first-round pick on a wide receiver as well. That's a lot there, but I would say that George Pickens, they may consider that. I don't know that they want to dump long-term money into his lap right now. I don't. They can also let him play out. 1 more year left on a contract. They could franchise him if they like what they see. They can do a lot, but that's going to be one of the questions for sure. And then we have this from Kevin, who says, Bob, you talk about the quarterback, but the issue is 9 men in the box and single wide receiver. Middle not open until you spread the field. Takes up 3 quarters. Absolutely right on that one, Kevin. Again, it's scheming people open. We don't see it enough here. I thought Arthur Smith's offense was supposed to be better, but at the end, it was just as or worse than what we saw from Matt Canada, in that predictability existed everywhere. That's going to do it for us. Join us again tonight after the news for the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Have a good evening, and we'll see you again tomorrow night right here at 10:35.